Welcome to this edition of the Jarrod Thomas Show podcast. Occasionally, I like to do a podcast where it's just me and my thoughts on various things that are sometimes going on in the world and that are sometimes going on in the community around us. And this is one of those episodes. You don't care, but I had some work things and I had some. So I've been a little bit detached from maybe the day-to-day grind of prepping for a show like this. I hope you enjoyed Jamie Seltzler's, though. Imagine losing 350 pounds. And by the way, still losing. As you heard him mention during the pod, he has, I think, anywhere from 50 to 65 pounds of skin that he is going to get rid of here before long. Just an incredible story. Just an amazing man. The dude is just top-notch across the board. So today, what's been on my mind recently is Charlie Kirk, Turning Point USA. You might remember Charlie Kirk is or was a conservative pundit, I'll call him. He was a guy that would, his shtick, if you will, would be to travel to colleges across the United States of America. Colleges, it works from the premises that colleges are basically an incubator for liberal thought. And so Charlie would go to these places and he would ask to be challenged. He would say, just let's have a conversation. By and large, both sides of the aisle thought that Charlie was a guy that did it mostly respect. We all have our moments, but mostly 90+% of the time was pretty respectful. Even if you disagreed with the guy, you could walk away thinking, I don't agree with him, but hey, that was fun, and maybe occasionally he would open your eyes if you didn't agree with him. If you agreed with him, this was more of what we need. God have this is what we gotta have. It's what okay. August 29th, Charlie Kirk gunned down in Utah, passed away a short time later. Now, there's a couple of things about his appearance in Grand Forks, or rather Glenn Beck's appearance in his stead, because as I mentioned, Mr. Kirk has passed, that I think are worthy of note that I'm not really sure are great. So October 9th, and long before Charlie was shot and killed, the plan was to come to Grand Forks, North Dakota, Turning Point USA to come to Grand Forks, North Dakota, and Charlie to continue to have these conversations with students on campuses across the United States of America. So Glenn Beck, I believe the last time I looked, he's the first or second most listened to talk show host in the country. He's a conservative talk show host. He doesn't hide from that. And it's certainly something that his listeners are very aware of. So Glenn Beck decides that in Charlie's stead, if you will, he's going to come to Grand Forks and he's going to do the thing. So almost 2,000 people ascend upon the Chester Fritz Performing Arts Center, is it? And decides to have this conversation. But I think a couple of things are of note. First, Glenn Beck isn't Charlie Kirk. So what you got from Glenn Beck wasn't going to be anything that you're going to get from Charlie Kirk, meaning Glenn focused his message more on faith. And not that Charlie and his wife, Erica, we'll get to her in a minute, very focused in their faith and very faith-based in what they were doing. So Glenn takes the majority of his time and focuses on a faith-based message. Okay. There is an opportunity, I believe, at the end for a little bit more of what I think most people thought that they were getting. There was I suppose, protesters, if you will, a few people that decided that they would take the opportunity to say that this is bunk and this is crap and whatever else. An unpopular take that I would share with you from here is as follows. I lean more to the right than I do to the left. Although as I age, I do see some places where my opinions of things and the way that I'm thinking about different things is changing. And it's not necessarily all the way to the left or all the way to the right. It just means that I'm trying to be a little bit more aware, a little bit more conscious, a little bit more in tune maybe with what's happening in the world around me and the different things that can be done to try to solve some of these issues. But let's focus for the second on what happened that night at the Chester Fritz. So 2,000 people come in to hear the message. 2,000 people likely walked in thinking they were going to see one thing and saw another. It wasn't lost on me that swag, T-shirts, hoodies were sold. There's a movement that's afoot that also looks and tries to generate dollars. There's that. Capitalism, baby, right? I mean, that's fine. And what you would expect to some degree, again, back to unpopular takes, capitalizing on the death of Charlie Kirk, and they give their message. But why were you there? Why were you there? Is it a good thing? Now, again, if you can take away the second grader argument of, well, they did it, so we should do it too. If you can put that aside for a second, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing when 2,000 people gather, regardless of the cause, regardless of your point of view, regardless of your political persuasion? Is that a good thing? Is it a good thing that 2,000 people, 2,000 like-minded people, with the exception of a few, showed up and sat there and all nodded in the affirmative and all nodded like, yeah. Is that a good thing? Or is it a better thing to have the exchange of ideas? Is it a better thing to have people come together and compromise? You get a little, I get a little, we shake hands, and everybody wins a little. In our politicized and polarized political climate, we've come to a place where either I win or you win, and there is no compromise. That if one side has control of our national political parties, whether that's the House, whether that's the Senate, or whether that's the White House, then the other side stalls, sits on their hands, works in the shadows to get other things done. And in the end, where all of this can stem from, and not entirely, so please let's keep the comments about, it's all or nothing. In fact, it's exactly the opposite of that. What I get concerned about, again, as an aging white male in Grand Forks, North Dakota, is that we've stopped talking. We've stopped having conversations. Even if Charlie Kirk had been there October 9th, even if Charlie Kirk had done his normal shtick, even if Charlie Kirk had set up a tent that he would sit under, and even if Charlie Kirk had challenged college students, it still would have been, well, my way is better than yours. When I think the dialogue and the conversation needs to be more along the lines of, hey, we have this problem. You look at it one way, I look at it the other. Is there a solution that we can both get on board with that may benefit both sides? It's sad that what I just described to you, and for those of you who are listening or will watch this, will think, that's great, JT, but it's awful Pollyannish, man. It's utopic. We don't do it that way anymore. And it's going to be very much to our own detriment. On the note of Erica Kirk, as I put the laser focus into preparing for this podcast today, I didn't have to go far to find content that Erica Kirk had put on the planet when her husband, Charlie, was with us. Lots of talk about working hard 6 days a week and making sure that you enjoy the Sabbath and that you tighten that family bond by taking that day to spend with your wife and your spouse and your children. Lots of talk about how the scripture calls for the wife in a family unit to be subservient and to be somebody that serves the man in her life, if you will. I don't know what the exact time frame would be upon my passing and running something called Turning Point USA. And I'm guessing if Erica Kirk was sitting over there and I was asking her this question, she would likely tell me that time is of the essence and that she didn't feel like she had any choice but to jump right to it and to make sure that the ball kept moving down the field, if you will, and to make sure that Charlie's work and his message and all of the things were moving forward, and that the mission of the organization was to continue to be thrust into the limelight, and that she had no choice. Again, I don't know how I would feel or what I would do, but she seems to have taken a pretty prominent role pretty quickly. And organizations like Turning Point USA have no shortage of people that will continue down the path of making sure that the message gets out. Again, unpopular take here maybe in this podcast, but I guess I would hope that if I passed, that my wife would wait a while before she would say, take center stage. Let's just say this podcast is much bigger than it is. And let's say it touches gazillions of people every week. And let's just say that without the beast being fed, which is what Charlie and Erica Kirk, I mean, I think that he had almost 14 million followers on Instagram alone, and she had a little over 7. So again, we're talking about big numbers here, but I think most people understand, even in today's politicized and polarized way, some time to grieve and some time to rest and some time to refocus and some time to try to figure out what's next. It's an interesting time to be alive, but I would ask you to do the following. Think about the wisdom in 2,000 like-minded people getting together with really no interest in hearing what the other side has to say. Wouldn't it have been something? Wouldn't it have been something if they would have brought out or had somebody give a opposing view to Glenn Beck? Glenn Beck does a national talk show host most every day. Glenn Beck, he can handle himself. But we're not conversing. We're echo chambering. And it's bringing out the worst in us. Because without it, if we were talking, if we were having conversations, and if we were, I can't promise you that some knucklehead wouldn't have shot Charlie Kirk dead. But I think what I can reasonably promise you is that the chances of that sort of thing happening lessen. There's disturbed people out there, and when you put yourself in the public eye, and when you step out and you decide you're going to be convicted in your opinion, and you say that you're going to handle things a certain way, and you decide that that's where you're going to plant your flag. And sadly for Charlie Kirk and for his family, it cost him his life, that you then decide to take all the things that come with it. And sometimes that's your life. But the thing I would ask you to consider is, how does that change? How does it change if you open up your brain and you decide, you know what? It's just time to have a conversation. And it's just time to enter into a conversation. It's time to listen. It's less time to talk. It's more time to read. It's more time to study. It's more time to try to figure out how the other side thinks. And again, you're likely not going to change your point of view, but you are going to understand why other people think differently than you do. And it's beyond all the other stuff that gets the headlines, right? I'm not talking necessarily about that. Do I think that people should do certain things or hide behind their political ideologies so that they can behave a certain way? Of course not. What I'm talking about is where this stuff really matters, and that's when policy is being decided. And when you're in college, and why that time frame in your life is so important is because when you're in college is when you're developing your thoughts, you're developing your ideologies, you're engaging in study of certain ways that governments are run, and certain people that through the years and through the decades have done this thing, and how presidents through the years have handled different situations. They all get plenty of opportunity to affect history for good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, we're as close as we'll ever be, and that we've ever been in my lifetime, 52 years of peace in the Middle East. I sit here today when I believe the last hostages were returned to Israel alive. President Trump should get a fish for that. But you'll read and you'll see the left will find a way to tarnish it because they feel like they have to. The right will take a victory lap that you can argue they earned or didn't earn. And President Trump will undoubtedly say something that only President Trump can say that will make everybody go, why can't this guy just be a little bit more presidential? Smart guy, tireless worker, undoubtedly has carved out a great life for himself, and he's done great things for this country. He has. But most can't get past the bravado. Most can't get past the ego. Most can't get past the fact that he can't seem to get out of his own way. Even at Charlie Kirk's funeral, he says, yeah, I don't know how Erica does that. She forgave his accused killer. And President Trump gets in front of the crowd and says, I don't know how she does that. I hate my rivals. I can't do that. Again, it dawned on me when I saw the crowd, and it dawned on me when I saw at the Chester Fritz. I thought it was, again, nice event. North Dakotans showed them how this is to be done. Behaved ourselves for the most part, right? Midwestern nice, did all the things. Was a very nice event. But it did get me to thinking. I thought, man, 2,000 people getting together without the other side or the other ideas being represented. Again, you get a little bit of a caveat because of what has recently happened. But I just am going to encourage each and every single one of you. Listen, consider. I don't expect that you're going to go from a Republican to a Democrat, or a Democrat to a Republican, or a conservative to a progressive, or a progressive to a conservative. But I guess this is my 20-ish minutes to implore you. I believe the time is now to listen more and to talk less. Thank you for listening and watching the Jarrod Thomas Show podcast. Have a great day.